Ooh. Guys. Pull up, we live. Pull up, we live. Pull up, we live. All right, I'm trying to figure out. It's not making no sense, bro. You know what? What I'm trying to do is see myself so I can make sure the stream is good. But shit, for some reason that joint not coming up that I'm streaming, even though I'm live right now. Let's go ahead and turn them notifications off. All right. or something? Like, what the fuck is this? Oh, cause it ain't start yet. That's why. Dumb. All right, yeah, but welcome to the first episode. All right, perfect. That's good. You. All right. I just need to make sure this joint like actually show up on my. Here's the channel. Yo, where is this shit at, bro? Ah, all right, perfect. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, my nigga. All right, let's get to this, John. Guys, welcome to the first episode of my political theory series. Dear Bureau Investigations welcomes you all. Thank you for showing up. All right, we got a special drawing playing for y'all today. And today we're going to be talking about Pericles, Thucydides, and the ideal citizenship. I know y'all looking for some more information as to what the ideal citizen is, ideal citizenship. So look, I got y'all. I'm about to explain everything. Now, first and foremost, for today, we got to get to our theorists. So our two theorists for today is Pericles and Thucydides. Okay, they're both generals. They're both Athenians, and they both have things to let us know tonight. All right. Now, before I get into who these two gentlemen are, excuse me, I got to give you guys context. So I need you to take your brain back all the way back in time before the modern era, okay? Before even the 1900s. All right. This is all the way back in 400 BCE. The 400s BCE. So this is before the current era. All right. The backdrop of these two political theorists is the Peloponnesian War. Okay, this conflict concerned the Spartans in the Greek city-state of Athens. Okay, they're both dominant cultures within Greece at this time. Sparta was the more dominant as they had been there longer, and Athens was the rising power. Okay, so they were both grappling for power over each other and to conquer all of Greece. And this conflict took place in three phases. Okay, the first phase was 10 years long, and it was called the Archidamian War. Okay, so it's literally 10 years from 431 to 421 before the current era. This is followed by the Peace of Nicaea, which is a peace treaty, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But it lasted from 421, so at the end of the Archidamian War, to 413 BCE. Okay, it only lasted 6 years, and we're going to get into why. The third and final part of this war was the Decilian or the Ionian War. Okay, funny names, I know. But this war began in 413 BCE, and it ended in 404 BCE. Okay. Now, let's get into briefly about the parts of the war, just so you kind of have a picture of what's going on at the time that Thucydides and Pericles are talking, okay? Now, the first part of the war, the Archidamian War, again, it started between 431 and 421 BCE. And it was defined by the clash between Athens' naval dominance and Sparta's superior land force. So Athens at this time had the superior navy. They had a lot of warships. They were able to launch attacks from the sea without ever coming into direct physical contact with their enemies, primarily. And Spartans had the superior land force. So they had a lot of manpower. They had a lot of physical strength. They were good at clashing head on with their enemies and dominating them by force. Okay. Now, Sparta, during this specific part of the war, repeatedly kept trying to invade Attica, which is a city within Athens, Greece. Okay. And to get around this, to protect themselves from this, Athens relied on its navy and its fortified walls to withstand all the attacks. So, remember I told you, Spartans are good at head-on collisions, but they're not good at this time, they were not good at fighting sea battles, excuse me. So while they kept trying to penetrate the walls of Athens just sent their boats that were scattered around the port and around the walls. Go, start cooking them like that easily. But however, there was a plague happening in Athens at this time as well. So while yes, they had the upper hand at first with the navy, this plague wiped out thousands of people within the city of Athens. So even though their navy is on the sea, holding it down, the people within the walls that they're protecting are dying to disease, which sucks. And even Pericles died in this plague actually, and this wound up weakening Athens. So because of their weakened state due to this disease, not due to Sparta, they was cooking Sparta, but because of this disease and their weakening, this is what led to the Peace of Nicaea, okay, in 421 BCE. So 10 years. And at in the 10th year, okay, they brought up a truce, temporary truce, okay. However, the hostilities between the two sides never went away, okay. Obviously, we would expect that to be the case. And this set the stage for a renewed conflict. All right, guys. Now, the Peace of Nicaea, okay, it only lasted 6 years. It was from 421 to 413. Now, this was supposed to last for 50 years. And like I said, the two sides they really ain't like each other. All right. Yes, they had it in writing that, oh, we're supposed to, exchange war prisoners and hostages back, and we're supposed to respect the treaty. But then you got allies on each side continuously attacking the other side's allies or attacking certain strategic points and basically ruining the whole peace treaty, basically, just completely disregarding the rules that they both agreed to. So Nicias, which was a statesman, is like a politician in this time frame. They're the equivalent of a politician. And he was supposed to, he intended to, stabilize the relations and restore balance between the two dominant powers. But what ultimately ended up happening is, again, distrust, allies defying the entirety of the peace treaty. Okay, and these rivalries quickly eroded the agreement, and has led to the third and final leg of this war, which is the Decelean War, the Ionian War, whatever you want. By the way, guys, I urge you to look all this stuff up. It's pretty interesting information if you want to learn more about history, because this actually happened. All right, now back to it. The Decelean War, okay, it almost lasted another 10 years, but this one was from 413 to 404 BCE. Okay, now in this part of the war, Sparta had the complete upper hand. Okay, remember in the Archidamian War, it was Athens who was winning at first. Okay, and they were weakened by the disease, but now the Spartans, they got revitalized. And you want to know why, guys? You want to know why? Because not only did they develop new strategies, but they also got foreign support. Now, some of y'all might call that clicking up. They say, you know what? We can't beat Athens on our own. We can't beat them on our own. Persia, other allies, we need y'all. Round up the troops. We about to go get into it. All right. They was rounding them up, sounding them up. Okay. And they wound them up. All right. And then they sent them and they said, go. They said, go. All right. I'm just fucking with y'all. Now, Sparta fortified, so they were able to break through the walls of Athens finally, and thus they cut off Athenian resources. So that's one thing against Athens. Okay, they have no more way to get resources. And then also the other point against Athens here is that Sparta mainly had Persia support financially. So they were funding their naval power. So Persia basically made up for Sparta's weakness by providing them a more superior navy, while they already had the upper hand with the head on the soldiers and stuff like that. Now, the one specific part of this war, or the deciding battle, was the Sicilian expedition, where Athens' fleet was completely destroyed in the Battle of Agaspotami. Okay, and this completely crippled Athens, so they couldn't even do anything. So basically, their only saving grace was their navy. All right, and without their navy, without that power that they had in the sea, controlling the seas around the area, they probably wouldn't have been probably wouldn't have been doing as much as they did. But hey, Aegospotami, their fleet is destroyed. So because of this, Athens wound up surrendering, and this marks the end of its empire and ushers in an era of Spartan dominance in Greece. Okay, so from then on out, the Spartans, ran Greece. Now let's get into our first theorist. We got General Thucydides, guys. General Thucydides. Some of these people didn't have last names. Last names really weren't common in this day. So, hey, his name is Thucydides. That's all y'all gotta know. Now, he was a historian. He was born around 460 BCE and he died around 400. The reason why there's question marks there is because nobody knows for sure when he was born exactly and when he died exactly. But they know he was alive roughly in this time frame because one of his greatest work in the political theory realm is the history of the Peloponnesian War, which we will talk about momentarily. Now, he was also a general in the Peloponnesian War, so he was the equivalent of a historian and he was a veteran. Okay. However, his military failures during the war forced him into exile for 20 years. Okay, from 424 to 414 or 404, I'm sorry. Now, his contributions are rooted in the Sophist movement, the Athenian professional intellectuals culture, and philosophies of Plato and Socrates. Okay, so we'll be getting into those theories and those concepts as this series ranges on. Okay, I got a lot of stuff planned. I'm trying to learn as much as I can so I can present it to y'all. Okay, so for right now, I'm gonna leave it on a special cliffhanger for y'all. All right, but again, General Thucydides' greatest work is the history of the Peloponnesian War. Now, some of y'all might want to know what military failures led to Thucydides' exile, because it is important that he was exiled. Okay, now and I'm gonna explain why. So in 424, while he was a general, Thucydides was in command of a fleet, and he was supposed to protect one of the cities in Athens called Amphipolis. But one of the Spartan generals led an expedition to Amphipolis to take it over. His name was Brasidas, the Spartan general, and Thucydides failed to stop him. Okay, so his punishment was exile for 20 years. Okay, now the reason why I said it was good, okay, it was a good thing, it was important that Thucydides was exiled, is because now he has a unique ability. Okay, he's able to see the war objectively, so he's able to see it from both sides. Before, he was directly involved. He was literally, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally involved in this war because he was an Athenian. All right, he was on the team. But now that he's not on the team no more, he can see all the actions that led up to, that fueled, continued, and ultimately ended this conflict known as the Peloponnesian War. All right, now, this book, Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War, it tells the story of the collapse of a once mighty empire. Okay, and it's told through the eyes of a man cast out by the place he called home, because he's from there. He was Athenian by blood, and they exiled him. Rightfully so. He did fail. I mean, we gotta be fair about that. But it was his home. Okay. Now, in the book, okay, this book is 8 parts long. And it was written from 431 to around 400. All right, and it was divided into 3 distinct sections. The first section was the notes that he took on the actual events. Okay, so this is as it's happening. He's writing it down. Yo, they did this, this, and this. Now we about to do this. All right. Then the next section is the Chronicles. So this is where he's rearranging and rewriting some of his notes to make them into an ordered, organized actual story. Okay, so from beginning to end, what happened. So this is not really anymore his personal experiences, more so fact based, what's happening at each point in time. Maybe he is in specific parts, but it's more so from a point of view of his actions that he did, not the thoughts behind his actions necessarily. Okay. And the third section is the elaborated narrative. So now he's putting his views and his opinions back into it after the analysis, after the facts. Okay. Now he was attempting to write a contemporary history, which means a modern history of events and things that he directly slash indirectly experienced. All right. And what he was able to finish was very thorough. And the reason we say what he was able to finish and why there's a question mark near the 400 is because around the time of the end of the book, so the book ends abruptly. So it just cuts off and stops. And that is when Thucydides is said to have died. So that's the reason why we only have specific parts. These specific parts. Okay. Now the characters in the book, before we get on to our next political theorists, are the Athenians and the Peloponnesians. So this is basically telling the same story about what happened from beginning to end, leaving nothing out, leaving no stone unturned. Okay. Now, within this book, okay, one of the main characters, of course, is our next theorist, Pericles the statesman. Okay, he was a democratic statesman. Again, this is the equivalent of a politician, and he was also a general. So just like Thucydides, he was a general in the Athenian army. All right, now his greatest political work, which all of this is inside the book because it actually happened, is he gave the first eulogy of the Peloponnesian War. Okay, and this was to honor the first to die in the first year of the war. So he gave this speech in 431 BCE. All right, and not only did he do the oration, but during the oration, he also shared his ideas on what the ideal citizen looks like. Okay, and this is where we get our first political theory, the ideal citizen. Okay, now, according to Pericles, the ideal citizen, in his own words, are those who have died for Athens, those who protect and defend Athens. And the reason why he says these people will defend and protect Athens is because they recognize for themselves that Athens is powerful, okay? And they recognize that it was courage, sense of duty, and honor in action that allowed Athens and Athenians to be this great. So they really believe this, okay? They ingrain this. It's in their blood that they believe that Athens is powerful, okay? And it's people, the ideal citizen, okay? They would never let personal failures make them give up their valor or their strength, okay? Rather, they will willingly give their strength to Athens as a glorious contribution. So they're giving their strength, they're giving their valor, their courage to Athens because they believe in it. They believe it's worth fighting for, okay, and defending. And he especially values members of the Athenian army. Rightfully so, he is a part of the military, so obviously he would give thanks and reverence to the military, but he does value them specifically. And he states, quote, "Heroes have the whole earth for their tomb, and in lands far from their own, where the column with its epitaphs declares it, there is enshrined in every breast a record unwritten, with no tablet to preserve it, except that of the heart." So really digest that for a second. And what I took from that, what I took that to mean is that veterans, people who are in the military, people who die for their country, they die all over the place. Okay, it's inevitable that they will die. Some of them die, some of them make it back. But the ones that do die and they don't get to die at home, it's not so much a stone column that will have their name or their courage with their acts on it. Is more so that they live on in the hearts of the people they left behind. Their memories and their legacy is left on by the people that they left behind. And their memory, because of that, will live on longer than any stone column, any man-made shrine to give them thanks. Now, how do we apply this? Okay, what is the ideal citizen in application? The ideal citizen is willing to die for their state. Yo, has my mic not been on this whole time? No, it has. Yeah, all right, I'm tweaking. But yeah, okay. The ideal citizen is willing to die for their state or their country. Okay, this person is willing to defend and protect their country because they recognize the power of the country they live in and they understand what it took for the country to become so great in the first place. Okay. Now they are willing to sacrifice their lives to protect their country, and they will be remembered and revered in the hearts of those that they leave behind. Okay. It's not really so much about them specifically dying. Okay. They don't have to die to be remembered. Okay, it's about willing to die. It's about willing to do whatever it takes, even including dying, to protect something that's near and dear to you. And I think that message will ring true for a lot of you. Not so much really the death part, but being willing to die for something you truly care about. Because in Pericles' eyes, if you didn't really care about it, then you wouldn't die for it. You would die for something you really, really, truly care about, in Pericles' opinion. Okay. Now, his closing statements were that people who want to model this, they should use the descriptions above. If you want to become the ideal citizen, use the description that he gave. And he believes that happiness can only come from the fruit of freedom and freedom of valor. All right. Now, he believes happiness can only come from being free, and that when you are free, you are valorous, valorant. Okay, it's only accessible. Freedom and happiness are only accessible. excuse me, to the people who show courage in the face of danger, especially in battle. Okay, this is what he means. He says that never, never decline the dangers of war. Okay, quote: "It is not the miserable that would most justly be unsparing of their lives. These have nothing to hope for." So he's saying, of course, miserable people wouldn't want to die. All right, they don't have nothing. They don't have any hope. Okay, they of course they would want to give up their life. They have nothing to hope for. But those whose continued life may bring reverses as yet unknown, and to whom if a fall if it came would be most tremendous in its consequences. Okay, so somebody who they know they have to keep staying alive. They got to keep going, because if they were to fall, if they were to die before they reach their goal, then the consequences for those they leave behind would be dire. Okay. And he says that surely to a man of spirit, the degradation of cowardice must be immeasurably more grievous than the unfelt death which strikes him in the midst of his strength and patriotism. So he's saying that the idea that you could die a coward, or you could even be called a coward, labeled a coward in any way, is infinitely sadder. Okay, that would make you infinitely more sad than if you were to die and not even feel it in the midst of being strong and showing your patriotism. So he basically saying, why would you want to be a coward and run when you could die a hero? That's basically what he's saying. Okay. Now, our second political theory for today is Thucydides' trap. Now, Thucydides didn't necessarily have specific political theories or philosophies. Okay, remember, he only really ever made the history of the Peloponnesian War. But that book, not only did it provide a framework for interpreting and reporting on history based on critical analysis and empirical evidence, so straight facts okay, and data. He also didn't use any religious or metaphysical explanations, okay? So he's not saying that God caused this war to happen or the gods, because um, ancient Greeks were polytheistic. They believed in multiple gods. So he wasn't saying that it was God or magic that started this war or allowed any side to win or gain the other upper hand. He was specifically focused on the real life events and what happened that led up to these conflicts, even the peace. Now, even though again he didn't have specific political theories, a popular political concept does evolve from his work. Okay, and this concept is Thucydides' trap. Now, Thucydides, during his recount of the events preceding the war, so this is before the war, he's analyzing what happened that started the war in the first place. And he argues that the quick ascension of Athens, so because they're a rising power, and the fact that this instills fear in the hearts and minds of Sparta, who is the dominant power. So they're seeing they're high and mighty. They've been on their high horse the whole time, and then here goes this new nation on the block. Basically, essentially, they the new nation on the block. Sparta's like, where y'all coming from? How y'all get all this? What you think you about to take my land? What you think you about to take all this from me that we work so hard? Hell no, we not letting you take this from us. So now they getting bold. Sparta getting bold because they see Athens is rising up. They getting their bag. They getting their money. They're building their navy, building their support. Okay, and because of all of this, that makes future conflict between them inevitability. An inevitability. Okay, so it's going to happen. So the theory itself, the theory of Thucydides' trap itself, was developed by Harvard professor Graham Allison in his book Destined for War. Okay, and the theory is this: when a rising power encounters a dominant power, the tension creates instability within the two regions and forces them into conflict. Okay, and we have examples of this. We have historical example of this. Notice first of all on the far right that damn near all of these conflicts, these examples of conflicts, ended in war. Okay, only four of them did not end in war. And a perfect example of this theory playing out in real life is United States versus Japan in the mid 20th century. Okay, now United States was dominant. Okay, they were the ruling power at this time, and Japan was a rising power. Okay, it ended in war. Look at in the mid 20th century, right above it, number 12, Soviet Union, UK, and France versus Germany. It's one of the world wars. It ended in war. Okay, so here you go. You see the theory playing out. You can even look at Russia and China versus Japan, war. United Kingdom and France versus Russia, war. France versus Great Britain, war. The Ottoman Empire versus the Habsburgs, war. Okay, so this theory, it has some weight to it. All right, now, guys, that was a very short episode. Okay, these aren't supposed to be long. Depending on the substance and the content that I read based off of, that's generally how long the episodes are going to be. So some of them might be a little longer, some of them might be a little shorter, but roughly they're going to be 30 minutes, 40 minutes long. I'm going to try and make it a little convenient for everybody to attend or watch. Okay. But thank you for showing up, those of you that did. If you're watching this after the fact, I appreciate you, my boys and gals. All right. Thank you for watching. Share it because this is good information. All right. You don't have to care, but it's good to know. Maybe you'll have a good conversation or this will spark some thought. Hopefully, the other theories that I get to and that I cover as we continue forward will make you think and expand your mind a little bit more like it has for me. But thank you for watching. I hope y'all have a good day, good night, good weekend. Go Birds. And see y'all. See y'all on the next joint. See y'all on the next joint.